Hi, I'm Rebecca Rosen, a spiritual medium and best-selling author. For almost 25 years, I've been serving as a messenger for spirit and helping people strengthen their own intuition. Join me as we continue to explore, heal, and ascend through episodes centered around your questions, channelings from spirit, and powerful conversations with my friends and colleagues. I'm so excited for today's podcast. I get to interview or have a conversation with my brother, spiritual leader, Rabbi Dr. Baruch HaLevi. We know who the overachiever is in our family.
Well, I'm gonna
Right, you're innate. So excited to have this conversation. We're going to talk about soul contracts and our new 9 Lives program, which we'll get to later. But I thought, I think a lot of my audience is familiar. You and I have put work out together, which has been so much fun this past year. But I thought we'd use the podcast as an opportunity to do a deep dive on the Enneagram and how my world comes together with your world, which is 9 Lives. And so I thought maybe we could just start with telling people, what is the Enneagram?
sure. Great to be back on your podcast and connected with your audience. I've felt a deep resonance with the people that I've met who come through your office, your work, because they're spiritual seekers and they're hungry, they're asking more from life. I would argue, you tell me, most of them don't necessarily have a grounding in a traditional religious framework anymore. At least that's sort of been my experience. They tend to be the spiritual, not necessarily religious kind of identifying people. Is that
Yeah.
fair?
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Well, the downside of that, and I'm one of them. I mean, look, I'm an ordained rabbi and functioned as much, and I don't have a religion anymore. As an identity, yes, but as a daily roadmap for living spiritually, not anymore. And I think that that's true with most of us. So what do we do? Because we still need a roadmap. We
Mhm.
still need a framework to orient our lives through a very complex, chaotic world. Right? This world is dense, as you like to say. It's very heavy. So how do we find our way through it? Well, that's to me what the Enneagram is. It's an ancient roadmap to navigate the density of this existence.
Yeah, and quite honestly, it has been the one thing that speaks to me more than anything because like you said, we were raised with Jewish tradition and I love the morals and values, but the actual religion doesn't really resonate for me. So I'm one of those people who's more spiritual and this is grounded. This is not woo-woo, the Enneagram. It is an ancient, practice. And so for me to bring, where I bring it's like where intuition and intellect come together for me, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's also nice because, look, I still identify as Jewish. A lot of my clients identify as Christian or Catholic. It isn't an either or. I like it. That's my part of my cultural, my identity.
Right.
So it's not mutually exclusive. Like this just is a supplemental roadmap, like you said, for the daily. What do I do now? And I think that that's one of the beautiful aspects of it because it's truly unifying. Like how many things in this really divisive world that we live in, religiously, politically, culturally, unite us. And when I'm working with somebody who's a devout Christian or devout Catholic or secular or atheist or whatever, it's really nice. I've never had an argument over the Enneagram. It's just this universal yes, the nod, the yes. There's a flow and energy to it that really is a welcome change in the pace of daily life.
I love that. Yeah. And I wanted to ask you, how has it helped you? Because I'll share how it's helped me, but I'm curious, as an 8, how has this worked for you?
Starting sort of macro, getting to micro, it's a great question. For me, like you said, it's not woo woo. Now, I live with woo woo, whether it's you down the hall from me, my sister, my wife, and I can do woo, but it's not where I hang out. And what I like about the Enneagram is it doesn't make me choose. It comes from a probably a spiritual path from Catholic mysticism and probably Sufism, probably Kabbalah. There's geometry, there's mathematics, there's physics. And so first of all, it's helped me because it's given me a framework or that roadmap that is holistic, and I don't have to say I'm going to, just go do Myers-Briggs, which is not a spiritual pathway, or I'm going to go do, my Buddhist mindfulness practice, which is more of a spiritual. So this has helped me because I need both. And I say that because I see a lot of people who, they want the divine masculine, divine feminine. And that's what this is for me at a big level. At a personal level, it's reminded me, and I'm sure this will take us into a deeper conversation, I am not an eight, right? I react like an eight. Eight is where I go, challenger is where I go when I'm in fear, when I'm in scarcity in your language. It's not my highest self. And so that has helped me because all the other systems I've ever partook, been involved with is reductionist. It reduces me. I am an INFJ. That's who you are. Or I am a yellow in this system or that in the other system. The Enneagram does not tell you, Rebecca Rosen, you are a nine. It says, Rebecca Rosen, when you're not operating the highest level, your divine nature, that's when you're imprisoned like a nine.
Yeah, it's the reactive side or shadow side of our personality, which we all have. It's
Right.
part of which leads into soul contracts. It's part of the earth school experience. We are all here. We chose to be here. We chose certain life lessons, homework we have to do. And this Enneagram has been such a priceless tool for me to look to when I'm in my shadow. Um, so I'm a self-preservation 925. And you can explain because we have all the numbers within us, but then we have our top ones. Head, is it head, heart, gut triad?
Yeah, I
Okay.
call it the
Well,
whole.
so
Yes.
okay, so I act like a 9, I feel like a 2, and I think like a 5, right? And I'm a self-preservation. And that what that is when things are out of my control, when I feel scared, when lots of change happens and I feel overwhelmed, sometimes my shadow comes up, I'm in my ego, and I go into my reactive nature of fight or flight, okay, because I feel threatened. But what it's done for me is that I've used it as a tool to step back, take a breath, get neutral, and then ask myself, from what frequency am I making this choice from? Right? Am I in fear or am I in love? Am I choosing from the frequency of light or shadow?
Yes.
And so it's just for me, knowledge is power. When you have the information, okay, in my 9, this is what happens when I'm not in alignment and I react. However, and the reason we don't want to do that is, I mean, I think it's obvious. We want to come from our higher selves, but it's all about with our soul contracts. We don't want to incur more negative karma. We're here to neutralize, to balance, to heal karma, to align with our higher selves, and to make choices from that higher self place, the frequency of light and love, right? And so I think as humans, we go unconscious. And when we get unconscious or come from our ego, we go into autopilot, which is the reaction.
For sure. And a couple things on that. Number one is, was it your last book that you have the Hawkins scale? I think it was.
Yes. What's Your Heaven? David Hawkins, The Scale of Consciousness.
So
Mhm.
that's all this is. The Enneagram before David Hawkins, as great as he was, he just picked up on universal truths. This has been, by the way, the Enneagram has been around for at least 2,000 years. Some would argue 4,000 years. So it ain't new, even though it's been adapted. And it seems like it's just another personality typing system. It's that, but so much more. But David Hawkins was just picking up on energy, frequencies, which you talk a lot about. And so each number is an energy, it's a frequency. You can see this in music. This aligns perfectly with do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, and all kinds of different frequencies in the universe. It aligns with color spectrum, and those are just frequencies. Well, its frequencies aren't good or bad. It's just that there's higher and lower vibration. I'm not teaching you anything. You've taught me this. And that when we're in fear, when we're on the lower side of the Hawkins scale, we're on the lower side of Enneagram 9. So Rebecca is in fear, like a unhealthy or reactive 9, but you can ascend up the Hawkins scale, you can ascend up the consciousness ladder, and then you can respond like a healthy 9. And
Right.
so that is a beautiful continuum inside of you. And it's fluid, it's energy, it's movement. And then you're flowing around the circle, like you said, because it's not a hierarchy. There's not one that's better than the other. Our work is to live holistically so we can have more fluidity, flow, higher vibration as we move through the universe.
Yeah, well said. And what I like to remind people of, I have to remind myself of this, is that it doesn't matter how enlightened you are, doesn't matter how much, work you've done. We are still spiritual beings having the human experience. And I personally, I can ebb and flow. There's some days I'm in alignment and I come from my higher self. There's other days, not so much. And so recently I had a situation, I won't go into the details, but I reacted. I own it. Something with my husband and I, and he called me out on it in a loving way, but he was right. And so I meditated and I said, guides, why did I react? I know better. Help me do better. And I meditated, and the mantra they gave me that I'm now saying daily is I choose from light, I respond in love. I choose from light, I respond in love.
It's an important message to your listeners, to everybody, especially but in the new agey and the spiritual seeking world, because oftentimes we make shadow energy bad, negative. It's not negative, it's a necessary side of the other coin of light. You can't have light without darkness in this world. In the next world, pure light. In this world, we live in shadow. And so instead of seeing it as wrong, see it as I start to see it through the lens of the Enneagram as necessary. I call it survival. When I counsel people through grief, I've counseled thousands of people through grief. If you skip over the shadow or the dark side, you'll never get to the light. There's only one way through it, and that's through it, because it has something to offer you.
Right.
So the question isn't how do I get over it? It's how do I integrate it? How do I harness it? How do I use it as a springboard to get to true light, not false light?
Yeah, I talk about that in depth in What's Your Heaven because you don't want to spiritually bypass it. And whatever you resist persists, right? So you want to lean into and embrace the shadow, and that neutralizes it. But I also think another point on that is using discernment, not judgment. I know for myself, I'll go into self judgment and I'll start saying, this was wrong, this was right, good, bad, positive, negative. The higher self, the heavenly way, is to go into discernment, right? Without the emotion of negativity or judgment behind it. And so, on that Hawkins scale, I think that's the biggest thing. You want to get to a place of neutrality. Okay. So it's the levels of consciousness are from 0 to 1,000. About, I think it's 250 is neutrality. Okay. And so anything upwards of that is a good place to be. And that's how you live your heavenly life, right? That's the basis of my book.
Yeah, it's just very simple idea. That doesn't mean it's simplistic. It just means it's not easy to understand. It's not easy to do. My teacher, Viktor Frankl, I'm a logotherapist, and he founded logotherapy, meaning-centered healing, essentially. And he just says it comes down to the famous quote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space lies your power to either react or respond. So he uses the language of reaction, and that's fear, and response, that's faith or darkness and light. And so our work is to ascend from reaction, from surviving. It's a starting point. Like if somebody's listening to this and you're going through grief, start by surviving, right? Surviving is enough until it's not. But if you're only surviving a month, a year, a decade, whatever, there's no formula. You just know it when you've now passed that point where you're still surviving and it's time to thrive, to live.
Right.
And that's where the Enneagram starts giving you sort of practical tools, strategies, and understanding of how to move from reaction to response or from surviving to thriving.
Yeah, it's very empowering. It takes you from victim, lowest frequency on the scale, to victor, right? Having agency over your life and your light, essentially.
That's it. And so our work with that we've done in collaborating around Nine Lives is showing people, I believe, at least that's how I see it, of how to do your particular work in this lifetime. And that's a really broad or abstract sort of charge. If you give that to me, how? How do I do that? The
Mhm.
Enneagram is how, right? And so now, and we can get into it if you want, but now that I have my Enneagram assessment, I know my numbers like you described, and I'm happy to go into detail about those. Now I have what to do while with the time that I'm here, and that's fulfilling your soul contract.
Right, which is a great segue into what are soul contracts. So, soul contracts, these became really prominent in my work during COVID. And what I noticed was I was marathon private readings over the phone because that's all we could do. And people were in desperation. They needed answers and comfort and connection. And so what started happening was my guides they granted me basically access to what's called the Akashic records. And the Akashic records, I like to say, think like iCloud in the sky. Okay. It's like a metaphysical library full of all of our lifetimes, past, present, future, ever lived. And it's held in the quantum field, which is not limited to time and space. And so in readings, I am able to tap into people's Akashic record. And so it holds your soul contract. So a soul contract is basically a loose blueprint or um, outline framework for the life that you signed up for, you agreed to prior to incarnating, that entails a handful of lessons, homework, whatever you agreed to do to learn and or teach certain lessons to allow your soul to evolve up that scale as we're talking about, right? And what I like to remind people of is, any contract you agree to, you have free will choice that comes into play. So just because it's predestined doesn't mean it's going to manifest. It's a probability or a potentiality that's in your energy field. So you have the opportunity to create it and bring it into being. A healthy way to bring forward what's in your highest and best good is to respond to life's circumstances rather than react, which is where the Enneagram comes into play.
Totally. And just a simplified, that's beautiful. And I'm totally into it. But a simplified version of this is the movie Disney's Soul.
Yes, soul. So good.
No, good. It just basically talks about these ancient ideas made simple, that we have our unique, the Kabbalah would call it divine spark, your purpose. Viktor Frankl called it your why. He said in the Holocaust, after his entire world had been destroyed, he said he made it. Not only survived, but went on to thrive because he knew his why. Quoting Nietzsche, if you know your why, you can endure your how. If you know your why in this lifetime, then no matter what the circumstances are, no matter how difficult or dark or dense they might be, if you know your soul contract, your purpose, your why, you can not only survive, you can thrive. And that's why I think we've created Nine Lives, is to help people identify their soul contract, their purpose, their why, and now to fulfill the contract.
Right. Show them how. This 9 lives is really amazing. I use it every day. In fact, I have my book right here because I personally was referring to it for some stuff that I needed to be reminded of. It's a powerful tool. But anyways, I want to just return real quick to how does someone determine their soul contract? Not everybody has the luxury of seeing a psychic medium, and that is one way. If you see the right um, medium or healer who has access, that's one way. Yes, but that's not the only way. We all have the ability to tap in on our own. So I just want to throw this out there. A few ways that you can do this is basically, what is my soul contract? Well, basically, observe the archetypes you take on in your life, the recurring patterns in your life. Okay. And that right there is a big indicator of your life lessons or homework. Like, for example, I have this mother archetype. And so that has a positive and a negative side to it because the shadow side of my mothering has caused me to enable some of the people around me. Right. And so that's not a healthy way. But bottom line is, if you look at the archetypes that are recurring in your life, that's one example of your soul contract. Another would be like when you go to sleep at night. Okay. Before you go to sleep, or you either ask or you meditate before you go to sleep, but just ask. Just say, I need to visit the Akashic records to remember my plan. Okay. Because on a soul level, you already know it. It's on a conscious mind level, we forget it. So you could say something like, please help me to access my Akashic record. I need clarity. I need guidance. I need help now. Show me next steps. Thank you. Okay. So So it's just a suggestion. And then also, I put a free quiz on my website for anybody who's really wrestling with this and needs help. Take this quiz. It walks you through questions that help determine your top 2 to 5 life lessons or homework that you're here to work on that are a part of your soul contract.
And another way is the Enneagram, right? Because these are not, first of all, there's not nine, there's an infinite combination, and I won't get into it, but not there's nine fundamental energies, but I think of it sort of like think of it as there are nine professional sports maybe, and they're all sports, but they're very different sports. And then within the sports, you have different teams, and within the teams, you have different positions. And so but first starting with like what's my sport, what's my why, what's my vibe, my energy, and that's where the Enneagram comes in. First and foremost, and I'm sure you'll agree with me, I left being a rabbi because I was sick and tired of people thinking that I was a middleman of God. I'm just another schmuck trying to figure this thing out like everybody else.
Right.
We're all on this rock, and we are the emissary. We are the medium. We are the channel. So start, and that's what I heard you say, is start
Yes.
there. However, realistically, some people have fine-tuned this or spent their life tuning into it, so turn to them or turn to a system. And that's where the Enneagram comes in. It's a system where you can pretty quickly get to my soul contract. Doesn't give you the fine print, like in the commercials, they start speeding through the fine print. That's for you to really get into it, but you can certainly find your sport, your ballpark. And I think that's one of the reasons why we brought our work together, because we wanted to give people a somewhat quick fix, at least to get going on this journey of the soul contract.
Yeah. And it's really simplified in a way that for me, it's like I can digest it. I can get my head around it. Like you can go as deep as you want, but you can also keep it pretty surface and it's still incredibly useful.
So my favorite example is a few Passovers ago. I think you were there. We had my son had a bunch of his fraternity brothers, and they were so interested in the Enneagram, but they weren't interested for spiritual reasons. They just were going out to the bars afterwards and wanted to know how it could help complete their night. You can fill in the blank. And then across the table, I was talking to my mother and our stepfather, or no, our stepfather wasn't there. And my mother is, helping our stepfather die. It's a process. And he's a 9 and she's a 2. And she's trying to tell him how to die, and he's trying to say, hey, this is not my way, this is your way. And we started using the Enneagram as language so that she could respond to him in his love language, in his soul contract, in his why. And now all of a sudden we had on one extreme and on the other extreme this system that's interesting, it's engaging, it's simple to understand, but it can take you to the bars or it can take you to the next world, right? And everything in
That's a
between.
great example of duality. This as I say, heavy 3D dense earth world, which it is for a reason, we most of us learn through contrast, right? And so we need that kind of black and white and everything in between. That's how we learn. Well, thank you for sharing that. So how would you, I mean, maybe you've already answered this, but how would you describe the difference between responding and reacting? Meaning like how does the Enneagram help with choosing from a place of love, responding?
Yeah, I think, examples are usually more helpful than anything. So since I'm talking to you, you react and respond like an Enneagram 9. One of the reasons why I say that is because in Kabbalah, and I know Rebecca has taught a lot of our listeners about this, but there's no name for the divine. There's no name for God. There's 72 in the Hebrew Bible, and they're just descriptions, they're verbs, they're experiences. The primary one is when Moses says to God, what's your name? And, what's God supposed to say? Like, Joe. So it says the only thing that God could say, Ehyeh, Eshe, Ehyeh, which means I will be that I will be, or I am that I am. And so I am is the name of God. I've heard you talk about this many times.
Mhm.
Um, so when I say I am an 8, I've just taken the infinite me and reduced me down to this little label, this little box. I am an 8. And that's why, so your listeners understand, we try to say, nobody's perfect. I react like an 8 and I respond like an 8. Rebecca reacts like a 9 and responds like a 9, but she's an infinite divine spark. So the numbers remind us of where we go in word fear, reaction, and where we go in word love or response. So a 9 is the reaction of it is, as you know, dealing with fear of conflict. When things become conflictual, you might want to call it dense, heavy. A nine goes into lethargy. I know you love this. Sloth.
Sloth.
That's the word. And no nine likes it because nines aren't lazy. What it means is when they come into conflict with density, they get tired, right? That's why they're at the top because it's the highest vibration, but it also struggles the most in this world with the most difficulty around density. And so your fear, your reaction, your kryptonite starts to bring the energy down, and you start then absorbing the density and you become heavy. And that's terrifying.
It is.
That's reaction
And I disappear.
in plain sight. Like
Yeah.
you're there and you're not there. I have your
Yeah.
niece, the self-preservation line, and I have a daughter who's an 8 and a daughter who's a 9. They're yin and yang, sort of like Rebecca and I.
Mhm.
So when my daughter who's an 8 and I get into an argument, we just heat up because we're like in it and we're working through our shit. When I'm dealing with my daughter's a 9, if I heat up, she cools down. She goes away. She's like a turtle in her shell, and I can't get to her. So those are different reactions to this world of density. And
Right.
again, for a 9, it's about noticing where I go when I'm in reaction, and then the pathway back to peace, back to light, back to love.
Yes. And as you're talking, it's coming to me to say this. This is so useful and helpful for us to do our own growth work and development. But it's so incredibly helpful when you're in relationship with other people. Like it has been, I've referred to it so many times in my marriage so that I don't take it personally when he reacts because I am an empath, I'm sensitive. And so that I don't go into my shell and shut down, I say, okay, time out. That's not him. That's him in fear reacting. And that's his shadow 7 coming out. And then finding, going back through the book you made me, which is a part of the 9 Lives course, where I'm like, how do I respond from love? And it's such priceless information in especially romantic relationships, but with your kids, with your coworkers, anyone.
That's the sort of like yes with the Enneagram because I know I'm an INFJ. I think you are too, actually,
I
in
am. Yeah.
My Myers-Briggs. First of all, I don't know what to do with that. Second of all, I certainly don't know what to do with my spouse. I can't remember what she is, but that's not what the system is really for. Enneagram, as you said, is a roadmap for how to stop reacting and start responding to the people around us. My relationship with my kids has dramatically improved. Certainly, my relationship with my spouse. That's why I have a program called 9 Shades of Gray. It's good in the bar, the bedroom, the boardroom, and the bedroom. Right? Like this thing is real, and you can use it in your life. But it's really about seeing other people, helping them fulfill their soul contract, or at least getting out of the way so you don't screw up yours.
That's so good. And so, what's your advice for people once they actually know their Enneagram core type? Okay, so they can take the test. I know that's included with our 9 Lives program. If you're now really dying to know what your type is. So, once they know it, what's the best way for them to move forward with that information?
Um, before I'd ever used to do in the back in the day weddings, I would hope that a couple has gone on a dating process and it's grown and then it's just you want more. If you're right with the right person, you don't want less. I've
Right.
seen the same thing with falling in love with the Enneagram is, it starts with a little bit of speed dating. You take a test, you get your number, then you start to research, then you start to sort of like, whoa, this is really exciting. And then you just go deeper. So one of the things we've done, as you know, is create a system that's as minimal as finding out your number, your soul contract, and as maximal as just dig into this. Now, don't just explore your number, explore your whole type, the way you act, think, and feel. Now, don't just explore that, explore the other nuances of it. Now, learn your spouses, now, learn your kids. So, to me, that's how you do this. You get started by taking the test or talking to me and just getting to this point of the energy starts flowing and then you just follow the divine energy and I've seen it 1,000 times, especially with those who are attracted to 9 lives. the energy just starts guiding them down a path. So that's how you get started.
That's perfect advice. And to bring it back to soul contracts, we incarnate each lifetime with our soul family. So it's soul group members, part of our tribe
Mhm.
in the spirit world. And we can call them soulmates. And soulmates sometimes are romantic. A lot of times it's like, look, they can be your sibling or your parent. But then once you've got a handle on your Enneagram and how you respond or how you react, then you can start looking at your soul group, your family members, your friends, so that you can use it in relationship to have the healthiest relationships, so that you can, positively create karma, neutralize, balance, heal, grow, and ascend. Because at the end of the day, that's why we're here. And when we die, whether we've done our work or not, doesn't matter. There's no perfection. We're perfectly imperfect, but just our pure intent to do our best work, then we get to evolve once we cross over rather than regress.
And you talk about these soul groups and to talk about it, but to be able to see it. I've been working with a lot of your clients who have started with their Enneagram, but then they ask me to do their spouse, their kids, their friends. And then what I do is I put it on a picture like this, and I put pictures of the family members or the friend groups on this. Once you see it, it's hard to explain, but things just start coming alive. I call this the Genneagram, a genogram, like a family history through the lens of the Enneagram. I did this for our family, Rebecca's and mine, and I put on here our dad, I put on here our brother, put on here us, our grandparents. It was
Our
amazing,
mom, yeah, all of it.
everybody, but especially with our dad because we have his history of suicide. I'm sure everybody knows that by now. Our father and our paternal grandmother, they were lining up in the same areas on the Enneagram and struggling with some similar things, some very different things. And then I start to see other family members who are struggling with that, as opposed to scaring me because, oh my God, what if you're the same type? No, free will, choice. But now I can work with my kid who is a lot like my father and start to show him how he's reacting and consequences of reaction and how to choose better, how to respond. And now I got this roadmap of my family and my friend group, my soul group, game changer.
Yes, this is the ancestral lineage stuff, the intergenerational patterns and programming that are passed down through generations, right? And we saw it clear as day with ours.
Yeah, you open up this conversation. I see it all the time with your clients, and they start thinking and opening to it. Then they come to me and they're putting it together on a roadmap and learning the tools. And I also see them working with Ariella to then go heal past generational trauma.
Yes.
And now you have this holistic way to not only understand your soul contract, to fulfill it.
Yes, Ariella and I did a podcast, if anybody's interested, on this topic, and it's fascinating because that is what she does as a shaman. She helps you clear and heal it. So my work, it's really amazing how we all kind of complement and lend to each other, because my work is the wow, right? I tap in, I read soul contracts, I connect to the departed, to angels, to guides. I'm able to give you information that only you could know, to confirm deeper faith and trust that you're not alone. There is a divine plan and there's a reason for the chaos in your life, right? But then what happens is clients, they're like, well, how? How do I move forward and like integrate this? And that's why B and I came together and said, look, we need a roadmap. And that's the Nine Lives program. So I am so excited for anybody listening who's like, okay, I want more. Check out this program, you guys. B, you did an incredible job with like the layout and the graphics. You gave so many amazing examples. I love like you give famous people's Enneagrams, and then you will do the genealogy piece of it if people want that. But it makes it relatable, easy to digest, non-threatening. So amazing work.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, it was a labor of love. I truly believe. I've been guiding people for 25 years, and I've worn a lot of different hats. And I would undoubtedly say this is the most simple and impactful. Like, if you want a bang for the spiritual buck, it's just people. It's sticky. People get it. It's fun. Like, how often do you get to say that? I used to have to like coerce people to come to the synagogue, but sometimes I got to kind of beat people off to they want this so much, and kind of keep them back, and take it slowly, because there's nothing worse, honestly, than a evangelical Enneagram person who's just like going down the rabbit hole, and they're losing everybody around them. But that should be our biggest problem. You'll
Right.
find your way, you'll put your toe in, you start getting going, and it's just so exciting to watch the roadmap of the soul contract come to life.
It really is. It's amazing. And so you can buy the program. It's self-guided. Tons of meditations I created that spirit channeled through me. All the knowledge and wisdom you bring through the Enneagram. It's really powerful. I actually use it. I use the meditations. I love them. I have to say, because it wasn't me, it came through me. But you also do individual counseling, you do couples counseling. I sent clients to you. They've told me it's like save their marriage or their relationship. So if people want to do more of that, I know you all have these men's groups. You're working with a ton of men, middle life. How can people find out more about what you have to offer?
Thank you. Well, they certainly can get to me through your website. They can also go to defiancespirit.org. That's my counseling coaching, where I do work with individuals and couples. And we always use the Enneagram as a starting point. So, it's really nice to be able to sort of integrate all these things. They're not standalones. And that's part and parcel of the work that I do. And then the work that your husband and I are doing now is called Man Uprising, and it's for men who want to, as we say, rise up in the second half of life. I've seen this throughout the years with your clientele. By and large, females. Whenever I do something spiritual out in the community, by and large, females. I would say probably an 80 to 20% ratio. What would you say?
It's getting a little better. I would say, like, for me, it's like 65, maybe 70, 30.
It's great. That's a huge
Yeah.
improvement. I think
Yes, it
we're
really is. It's amazing.
And the same is true like in yoga studios, wherever you go, like men are moving back or coming to a deeper conversation in their lives, and spirituality. And yet men and women are not the same. And so what Man Uprising is sort of a spirituality for men, grounded in different language and terms, but all getting us to that same place. And so they can learn more about that by going to manuprising.org. And I'm using it also in organizations and businesses with a lot of your clients who own businesses or run organizations, because it's a spirituality that can be secularized and isn't threatening, is totally appropriate for a business setting where, like nine lives might not be, but these principles are. And so translating that over to business and organizations has been amazing as well. So you
It
can get all that on my website.
Amazing, and we'll link it below. I have to say I used, B. I hired him to do it for my company because I had a complete restructuring, with new staff coming in, some staff leaving. You nailed it to a T. I love my staff. They're amazing, and the way we all together work now, better because we had meetings and we talked about our Enneagram types so that we don't take things personally. We know how to approach conversations. We know how best to work together based on the strengths and weaknesses according to our Enneagram. So I highly recommend it if you're looking at business stuff, especially if you're looking to hire in or how to bring your team together in a more cohesive, solid way.
Yeah, especially in this era of diversity, we're so proud of external diversities, and I think it's great, all these wonderful things. But what about internal diversity? I've worked with so many companies who don't promote Enneagram nines or fives or ones because they're not on pace with the sevens and eights and threes, and they don't even know it. And then you show them the data and you say, look, on your leadership team, you have 10 sevens, or, in this department, you have no whatever twos. And so people, business owners and leaders, are their eyes are opened because they didn't realize that their bias had led them to create
Mm,
a glass ceiling for certain Enneagram types. And we need all these types around our
yeah,
table.
so true. For balance, balance, balance. Well, this has been amazing. Thank you for, doing a deep dive with me on this. I think I really felt like my audience needed you and I together talking more about this to really get their head around it. So I think we accomplished that.
And I'll say one last thing. If you want a testimonial, then just look at Rebecca and I, because I'm an eight, she's a nine, yin and yang, and yet 40 plus years later, and we're still going strong,
That's
happily,
right.
brother and sister, growing, because I think in no small measure, at least for me over the past few years, because of the Enneagram 8, and I'm sorry for burning your Barbies back in the day.
I'm still mad at you about this.
Thanks for having
Yeah, no, amazing. Well, thanks for being on, and I'm sure we'll do another again soon. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Small Medium at Large. For more information about my offerings and events, and for additional resources on your spiritual journey, please visit my website, RebeccaRosen.com. You can also follow me on social media by searching at Medium Rebecca Rosen on Facebook and Instagram. As always, I am wishing you brightest blessings and all love.